Athlon Sports recently ranked all of NCAA college football, and we're going to talk about the SEC, particularly teams that are too high and too low. We can start off with the team, Georgia, the hometown team. They are undoubtedly the number one team. I don't really think there's too much that had to be said. I mean, the only team really maybe you could even have the conversation about starting them over number one is Ohio State, maybe?
Yeah. Best coach, best quarterback, case in point, closed. You don't really need to have an argument at this point in the offseason or even before a game is played. Best coach, best quarterback, Georgia Bulldogs, number one team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, they're just the resume and what they've built year after year after year. Like, you know what you're getting out of Georgia. Like, at worst, maybe 2 losses, and things would almost have to go.
That would be sky is falling in Athens.
Yeah.
That's the standard that has been set.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it's kind of like Alabama. Like, you lose 2 games, and still that gets you in the playoffs. So, Georgia, pencil them in. College football
Honestly.
players. I think that line.
What was that?
It's minus 600. That's
a good investment.
That's an investment. That's an investment. I'm taking out a loan and putting that in Georgia.
$100 return on a $600 investment. That, in the stock market, they would call you a genius.
Now do it with 600,000 and I'm to take out a loan on the entire Sports Talk ATL business and be like, yeah, I'm actually putting this all on. What is this for?
Smart business.
I'm putting this all on Georgia. So the next 4 out of the next 5 teams, or 3 out of the next 5 teams, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama are 4, 5, and 6. Any one of these teams you think does not belong that high?
I am not high on Texas, but I know a lot of people are, and it really just my viewpoint derives from one thing, and it's Quinn Ewers. I don't think he's it. I love Sark. They're recruiting very, very well. Texas Longhorns are for real. They are back. But I'm just not a big Quinn Ewers fan, and I do believe in Alabama, and they're just getting this kind of undeserving flack because Nick Saban's gone. I don't see it. Kalen DeBoer has beaten Steve Sarkisian and Dan Lanning 3 times. He's 3-0 against those 2 programs in Washington. For what it is, they've had less talent. So I still believe in Kalen DeBoer. They have continuity with Jalen Milroe. You could argue, Bama should be 4 and Texas 5 or vice versa. What I do think, we agree on is Ole Miss it has no business being in that conversation. They're in a tier below. They're not a top 5 team. They may be a fringe top 5 team, but they're closer to 10 than 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ole Miss fans that watch this show, they constantly comment on YouTube anytime we talk about their program. You don't know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. I do know what you're talking about. You guys haven't won the SEC. You haven't really ever really sniffed.
Y'all are hanging banners for double-digit wins.
Yeah. I mean, like, give me a break. Like, and I get that you have this hyped up, transfer class.
This is a big year for them.
Jackson Dart. I love Lane Kiffin. I don't love Jackson Dart. I don't think he's like an elite quarterback by any means. He can have good games against bad defenses, like you saw against LSU. But when push comes to shove against Alabama, when push comes to shove against the University of Georgia, he shrinks. He's not the kind of passer that you need in those big games against those elite defenses. And listen, the last time I saw you play those 2 teams that we're talking about in the top 6, you lost by a combined total of 60 points. Like, you're talking about being a playoff contender because what? You beat a Penn State team that had a bunch of transfers in the Peach Bowl that nobody cares about, because you beat an LSU team that literally couldn't stop a nosebleed in a game that you nearly lost because your defense couldn't stop a nosebleed either. So it's like, let's talk about what Ole Miss has really accomplished here. Like, they haven't really done much against good teams. Well, their biggest win is beating a 9-3 LSU team that wasn't that good.
A disappointing season for LSU.
At home by 3 points.
And it was a last play win where Jane Daniels put it in the tight end's hands and he dropped it. And it was a tight window pass.
They were also down by 10 in the fourth quarter.
I'll leave that be. The fact of the matter is Ole Miss had the best portal class there is, but a couple of trench players and the top running back, that's not the difference in Georgia. Can you rent an elite team? That's basically what you're asking yourself. I don't see it. I don't see that competing with Alabama or Georgia. Georgia comes to Oxford, and I have a distinct feeling that a lot of Ole Miss fans are going to be leaving that game early.
Yeah, I mean, probably that's a game you leave at halftime. It's going to be a game that you get absolutely embarrassed by, and it's going to be another example of this program not being quite ready to challenge the big dogs.
They're a great team outside of the championship caliber teams.
Yeah. I mean, you just the strides
You're
that they
a
would
top
have
10 program.
The strides they would have to make is basically like 2018 to 2019 LSU if they want to be. It'd have to be that big of a jump for them to get in the same conversation. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but your transfer portal class is going to have to do it in 1 year. That doesn't usually happen. The next group, we talked about LSU. Missouri's that sneaky team nobody's talking about, but coming off a great season, great defense. They lose their defensive coordinator and a lot of their defensive staff, but you got to like what Drinkowitz is building there. They have a lot of offensive pieces coming back. They're the sneaky team, right? They're the sneaky SEC team that could throw a wrench in a lot of these other SEC teams' plan that are hoping to get in the playoffs at that 9 to 12 range.
Right, and Brady Cook is a very, very good quarterback. And bringing him back is a huge deal for Drinkowitz, who is losing a majority of his defensive staff to LSU, who is also in this mix. So I think, when you're talking about Missouri, LSU, and Tennessee, I think, you have similar questions about all of them. First of all, Tennessee's defense, I don't know if Heupel's coach team is ever going to have an elite defense, but can you have a good enough defense to support a first-time starter in Nico Iamaleava? LSU defensive questions, Missouri defensive questions. I think that when you talk about those three programs, there's a lot of questions that need to be proven. I think all three of them, you could make an argument back into the top 10 to a 15 ranked team. And it all depends on how all three defenses really adjust from good defenses from Missouri, bad defenses from LSU and Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into the second half, kind of the sleeper teams. But in terms of those three teams, the team that I actually think has the best shot of making the playoffs,
don't say Tennessee.
The University of Tennessee. I am high on the University of Tennessee. I'm high on Josh Heupel.
I like Heupel.
I'm worried about LSU's defense. I don't see the strides necessary to be taken by that defense. And I am an LSU fan. I want to believe it more than anyone, but I'm worried about LSU's defense.
I have more worry about LSU's offense than their defense this year. And it's not that their defense is going to be elite. I just think there's no way they could be that bad. I have questions about Nuss and how quickly he can, immerse himself in this starter's role. And I know we saw the bowl game and he did a lot of great things against a very tough Wisconsin team defense. But there's questions, is Kyron Lacey ready to step up in that Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, number one wide receiver role? They obviously have a great offensive line, one of the best in the country. So that goes a long way. I think the defensive talent, the secondary has questions, but the front seven talent is there. Some questions about depth of the defensive line, but they have good pieces. And I do believe in Baker, the defensive coordinator for LSU.
Yeah.
I mean, look what he did with Missouri with less talent at Missouri.
Good piece is very generous to call what LSU has on the defensive side. I think Nuss is going to
stars, I guess.
I think Nuss is going to be very, very good. I'm not too worried about him, but you're right. They cannot possibly be as good as they were a year ago down in Baton Rouge.